So what I want to talk about in this first presentation is just some general things about how you can improve as a single operator. That's the category that I find the most fun and enjoy. So when you think about contesting, it's very simple. Contesting is really just a game. You have to think of it that way. It's just a game. It has different players, it has rules. The rules define the scoring and what bands we can use and so on. Those things all define the strategy. And so when you think about your contest scores, it's really about how can I play the game the best. Well, the players, one of the interesting things about contesting is that the players can come from all different interest levels. So, you know, if I want to go into Formula One, I pretty much have to have $100 million and a lot of time and expertise and so on. But in contest, even in marathons, I would have to go run for miles and miles every week. But in contesting, I don't have to do anything except turn on my radio at the right time in the right place. And so when you actually look at a contest, it's made up of people who are just playing and then people who are trying to maybe do the best they can with their circumstances. And then it's really a very small group at the top that's trying to win. So they know who they are. We can ignore them for now. We're interested in what we can, you know, in the lower levels here. But at any level, in the end, what shows up in the magazine is the score. So you decide for yourself what you're participating for. Are you chasing countries or, you know, trying to make the most score? But the score is what we want to focus on doing the best. So when you look at the, you know, what it takes to make a score, there's a number of things that that good operators do to help improve the score. They prepare, they plan, they use good operating techniques, and most of all, they're motivated to accomplish something. For me, the motivation is very simple. I want to make sure that no one is ahead of me in the score listings. Other than that, it doesn't really matter. So when I'm falling asleep, that's the thing I keep remembering is, okay, I don't want to lose because I fell asleep. All right, so let's talk about prepared first. And all this really means is that you have the right equipment. You've thought about your station. I think for contesting, if you're going to be successful, you want to invest in antennas. You can have a 10,000 euro radio, but if you have no antennas, you're still going to be weak. So step one, good antennas, have some flexibility. 2 antennas is better than 1 antenna, always. For the station, you want to make sure you're going to be sitting there for a long period of time. So you want to be comfortable and things are easy to reach. I did a contest one time where the radios were up above me off the table. It looked beautiful. But halfway through the contest, my shoulders are hurting so bad I can barely, so as for the next week, I'm walking around with my shoulders hurting. So you have to think about the long term. And then of course, reliability. In my station, every time I would set something up or think about the antenna switching, I always thought about, if this part failed, what would I do during the contest? How would I work around this problem? And a lot of times it's just have 2 of everything. But even there, you still will have things in your station that if it fails, you're done. And so you want to think about that and try to be prepared. So this is a picture of my station from several years ago, but there's a couple of points I wanted to make here as you're designing your station, things to think about. I want everything to be very close so I'm not reaching a long way. So a lot of times if you put the radio side by side, you find yourself having to reach. So I like the L-shaped table, so both radios are very close to my hands. I have to look at the keyboard when I'm typing. I can't. I just have to look at the keyboard. That's the way it is. So I want the keyboard and the monitor to be very close together. So I see stations where the keyboard is down here and the monitor is way up here, and I think, how this guy spends the whole contest going like this. So get things close together. Now I'm right-handed, and so when I'm doing CW, I'm sending with my right hand. What's the thing you don't want to do when you're sending is change the antennas because then you hot switch the relays or something like that. So I put my antenna switches on the right so that there's a good chance I'm not going to reach up, I'll have to stop transmitting if I'm going to change antennas. But it's not unusual that you're working someone or someone calls you, say from where I live, if a ZS calls me, I need to turn the antenna a little bit. Well, I want to do that while I'm sending the exchange, so I have the rotators on the left. So the rotators are right here, there's 4 of them, and they're on the left side. So now even while I'm sending or typing, I can still reach up and move the rotators. So it's a small thing, but something the kind of things that you want to think about when you're designing your station is plan for where things are. Now the amplifiers can be the farthest away because you should touch them the least. You set them to the right band and then you're done. But it doesn't show it very well in this picture, but here's 1 watt meter and here's the other watt meter. I think if I could do anything, I'd put the 2 watt meters right here. Not because I care how much power there is, just that I care there's power. Especially with the new solid state amplifiers, what'll happen is you're operating and then no one's calling you anymore and you look up and the red light's on because the amplifier tripped off. I don't have any solid state expensive amplifiers. I have the old-fashioned kind because I don't have very good SWR. So anyway, again, if you're going to make a good score, you need to be sitting at the station, you need to be working people, and that means you need to be, you want to prevent being tired. So you want to automate everything. So have the radio connected to the computer, have the keyer connected to the computer, so that you're just typing and listening, typing and listening. Everything else is happening automatically for you. I get a lot of logs in the CQ Worldwide where you can tell people came back and entered things later because the band is wrong for all of their QSOs or something like that. So if you connect it to the computer, you don't have to worry about that. So here's the real question. When you sit down at your station and operate for 8 hours, or until you get tired, and then think about all the things that cause problems or that make you not want to change bands. So let's say that you're 8 hours or 12 hours of operating and you're on 40 meters and you should go to 80 to listen for some multipliers, but you go, I don't really feel like it. Okay, why don't you feel like it? What is stopping you? Those are the things you want to work on in your station. Is it because I have to go outside to switch the antenna? Is it because, is it just because it takes too long to tune the amplifier? Those kind of things. So if you focus on making those things more efficient and better, then your whole contest experience will be better. Seems very simple, but you see stations all the time if you look in pictures that don't think about these things.
What should be the criteria then for changing bands?
Well, the ideal thing is you push the button on the radio and everything magically happens. That's as good as it gets, right? So I think the variables here are how much money you're willing to spend or time you're willing to spend versus, so it's...
Okay, you're talking about mechanical or how you do the actual switch, not mentally why you should switch. Or
no, that's a whole different category.
Yeah,
the mental part about why you're changing bands is a different thing.
Okay.
What we're trying to do here is just make things easy. So that when you have a thought, I should change bands, you're not thinking all the reasons why you shouldn't change bands. You're going, yeah, I should change bands. So that's what we're there. Okay, so the next thing is I have a station, it's ergonomically designed, I'm ready to go. What's the next thing I need to focus on? That's the strategy, which means I need to decide what contest am I going to enter. In the big contest, there's all bands and single band and high power and low power and multi-op. So all these things are choices. They're all different contests. And then once you've decided what you want to do, then you need to have a goal. And the goal could be, I have no goal, I'm just going to get on the radio and talk to people, which is fine. But if you want to try to make a big score, it helps to be a little more specific than that. So decide, do I want to win a certificate or am I trying to set a record? If I'm trying to set a record, then I know that I'm going to enter this contest, I'm going to sit in the chair for every possible hour that I'm allowed. If I'm going to win a certificate, it might be I look at the logs and see who I have to beat, or look at a category where there's no one there, all kinds of different choices. But try to pick what game you're in at the beginning. And then remember, what's the most important thing that we're trying to do here, which is make score. Well, to do that, we have to understand the scoring, which means you have to read the rules and know, do I get extra points for CW, or do I get more points for working someone in a different country or a different continent? Do I get, like WPX, I get extra points on 40 and 80 meters. So I need to know those things so that I'm thinking about them as part of my plan. And then you have to understand what the multipliers are. So one of the things that makes the CQ Worldwide so much fun is there's lots of countries on, but then you also have these zones. And zones are just an extra thing to show kind of, not only am I a DXer who can work lots of countries, but I can work all parts of the world too. So, but you want to figure out the scoring, and then you would like to make, as part of your planning, try to decide, okay, how big of the score can I make? And then work backwards from that. What's my goal? So let's pick an example. I have 1,000 contacts, 100 zones, and 250 countries in the worldwide. And this is, say, Sunday. So we're getting, well on in the contest. And I have a chance to be in a pileup to work my 40th zone on 20 meters. Or I can go work 10 more people. Which one of these is more valuable? Anybody have a choice?
The solo.
Why?
Multiple.
Okay, so multiplier is 1. Well, it turns out, since you're the only one brave enough to say, the answer is the 10 more contacts is worth more for my score.
That's why I'm never ready.
But I picked this example on purpose because almost every contester in the world, including the really serious ones, would go for the 40th zone on 20 meters because that allows you to brag for the whole next year. I worked 40 zones on 20 meters. And the score, okay, that's important too, but this is a great example of sometimes the decisions that you have to make, especially as a single operator where it's all on you. Do I stay here or do I go? Yes?
So it's not, none of the logging programs has that kind of simulation opportunity, the decision-making part that you can check 10
Actually they do. But let me just go on here and then I'll show you why. So it turns out if you work backwards and do the math, this multiplier is worth just about 3 QSOs at the normal scoring ratio. So that's really that's the number you want to keep in your mind. And if you look in the logging programs, they'll often say value of a multiplier, and they'll do it in minutes or something like that. And the reason for that is they'll take your rate and the score, and it turns out the math is really simple, but they're estimating for you or trying to tell you how long should you wait to work the next multiplier. So if you see, minutes or multiplier is worth X minutes, what it's trying to tell you is at your current rate, how many minutes can you spend on that multiplier compared to making some more QSOs? I don't remember it. And if you know that I can tune down the band and work 1 more station per minute, then that means I can spend 4 minutes trying to work the 40th zone to have the score be the same. And now, having said this, remember the conditions and so on change during the weekend. So if it's a very slow period of the contest where the rate is very low, then it may be very worth it to spend time working a multiplier. Or if it's a period of time where the band is only open to Asia at this time, and I know if I'm going to work Asia, I have to do it now. In that case, the strategy says, go get the multipliers at this time because I have no choice, and we'll have to make up the rate later on. So all these things are part of the decision-making process. But the first one is, at any given moment, how long should I wait or spend? Actually, not wait. We're going to get through on the first call, right? How much time should I invest in this pilot? Yes?
And remember, there's also a possibility that one of the 10 QSOs could be a new multiplier.
Always. That's even better. So this is actually the math that your logging program is trying to do. It turns out the value of a multiplier at the end of the contest is QSOs divided by multipliers. So you can always do just kind of a rough calculation. If I'm going to make 1,000 contacts and have 250 multipliers, then a multiplier is worth about 4 QSOs. And then you figure out how much time that's worth based on what your current rate is. And that's what the logging programs are trying to show you. So we know where the score comes from. Now the question is, where do we go make that score? And one of the nice things is the CQ Worldwide and the WPX both make the logs available, so you can go look at anybody's log in the contest and see what they were doing. You can always ask your competitors to share logs back and forth. A lot of guys like to do that just to see how both of you are operating completely different contests. It's fun to go back and see what the other people did. But what you're looking for when you look at these other logs for planning is, where do the QSOs come from? Where do people make their score? Does activity repeat? And the answer is it does. Almost every year I see the same rate in each hour of the contest. It may be on a different band. At the high sunspots it's on 10 meters, and in the low sunspots it might even be just on 20. But the pattern is always the same. So you need to understand, and the pattern is partly the solar conditions and the sun, but it's also the people. Remember, we're talking to people. So all the people in the East Coast go to sleep at a certain time. All the people in Europe go to sleep at a certain time. Those are going to be slow times, and you just need to recognize that. So the next thing is, okay, I have a plan. Now I have to execute the plan. I have to do what I planned, and that requires using your skills. If you think about a contest QSO, they all have the same thing, right? You give your call, you get back an exchange, and then you give an exchange, and then it's done and you go to the next one. It's always the same. So once you realize that, the goal here is how quickly, how efficiently can I get through this process? My call, exchange, exchange, done, next. Well, think about when you were learning to drive a car. When you first started, you had to think about everything. You know, do I look in the mirror? Okay, I got to remember to steer, I got to remember to gas, I got to remember to when to shift or how to shift. You're constantly thinking about this. And now today, after you've been driving for many years, you realize that you're driving and listening to the radio and on the cell phone and reading the road signs, and you're doing all these things because you're not thinking about driving anymore, which that can be good or bad. But the same thing is true in contesting. Because it's so repetitive, after a while, again, just doing it over and over again, you don't have to think so much about each QSO. You have time now, you use that extra time to think about, am I on the right band? Does that call sound right? Did that exchange make sense? After I log the QSO, look at the log and make sure that I actually type in the right thing. Use this extra time to be thinking about the strategy and what I want to do next, and so on. And then eventually, after you do this enough, then you'll say, well, I need a second radio so I can do something with all the extra time. But in the beginning, just like when you were driving a car at the beginning, drive one car, and then when you get really good at driving one car, you can think about driving the next one.
At the same time.
At the same time, that's right. And then the other thing here, and there's just no escaping this today, you have to learn how to type. You don't have to be great at it, because think about it, in a QSO, a typical QSO takes 20 seconds. You have to type 6 letters in 20 seconds. Really not, you don't have to be a touch typist, but you do have to know where all the letters on the keyboard are. And the more accurate you are at getting things from your brain to your fingers, the better your score will be. But there are still people who log on paper, but they're getting smaller and smaller number all the time. So now there's different techniques that you would use on sideband versus CW. And the first one's kind of funny, it's like breathe. Well, think about an opera singer or somebody who's singing professionally. When they know a long note is coming, they find a way to make sure their lungs are full so they can do the whole long note. The same thing is true in the contest as well. If you know what you're going to be saying, you know you're going to be calling CQ, or you know you're going to be giving the call sign in the exchange, or you know you're going to be finishing the QSO. Again, part of that getting used to the rhythm is okay, I got to breathe in first, then start talking. Because nothing sounds worse. You get halfway through and then you're out of breath and you have to stop and breathe in. So just relax. The second thing is, back to flow again. Do the same thing over and over and over again. Again, the more consistent, the less thinking. I don't want to think, I just want to do. Call sign comes in my ears, gets under the keyboard, and I repeat it back to the station who called me, and I give them the exchange. The key here is to get rid of all the extra words. There's some examples here, but the guy will come back and he'll say extra words like, oh, please copy my 5905, or oh, Roger, you're 5914, you are this, or at the end of the QSO, I love the guys who don't ever send their call, but they always have time to say, QSL the 14, thanks, QRZ. That's you just used all that time, and you could have just told us your call, and we'd all be a lot happier. So, but this is, again, part of improving is just getting more and more efficient in how you exchange the information. And it's okay to say hello to your friends. You don't have to be rude to them. But at the same time, don't say anything that you don't need to. And you listen to somebody like 8P5A in the big contest, just always very consistent the way he says things over and over again. You don't hear any highs, you don't hear any lows. He doesn't talk faster when the rate's higher, doesn't talk faster or slower. Just very even all the way through. You know exactly what to expect from him, and that helps on both ways, because the pilot knows what you're going to do, and they're used to listening to you that way. Another hint, sometimes this can work both ways, but often if somebody calls you with certain words for the phonetics, it will be easier for them if you use the same words back again. However, if you weren't sure you got it right, or they use some funny phonetics, then that's a place where you wouldn't do that. You would use the standard ones, because you're trying to force them to confirm or deny that you got the right letters. But sometimes this also goes to the thinking. I don't have to think as much. If I heard the guy say W6 Delta Germany Hotel, it's easy for me to just say the same thing back to him rather than try to convert it into something else. Yes?
One counterexample to that, during a contest, a guy called me as Whiskey 6 YYY, and I came back to him and said, W6 because.
It's really sad that you make probably, multi-thousands of QSOs in a contest, and the one that sticks out in your head is the weird one. But that's okay. That's what makes the game so much fun. But yeah, that's a great example. Yeah.
On that point, what about repeating just with letters without phonetics? Is that a bad habit, or is it efficient? If you're damn sure that you got it right.
If you know the guy is I would call him professional. If you know he's one of the good guys, and you know he's very loud, and you know who he is, and he knows who you are, then I don't have a problem. Then sometimes I'll just say, the call with like 8P5A. I don't need to say that phonetically, because we know each other, and we know we're working each other. But if you're not sure, I think that's a dangerous thing to get in the habit of not saying phonetics, because now the guy on the other end doesn't know for sure if you really got the letters right, especially if there's things like D's and B's and P's and T's and all those other letters that sound the same. What we need is a phonetic library for numbers, because think how often numbers you just can't. for me, with my call, my 5 becomes a 9 a lot of times. I don't know why, but that's... So anyway, in the end here, the trick is to speak clearly, and the way that happens is by going slow to go faster. In other words, don't talk faster to make the rate go faster. Be more clear and articulate, just very even. And by doing that, the pileup will go faster. But if you speak too fast, we hear this, you know, with some of the Hispanic operators, South Americans and so on. They try to go faster, and we don't understand them when they're speaking slow. So when they speak really fast, then you're not sure at all what actually just happened. So anyway. CW, it's the same message, but now it's a little bit different because we don't have all voice and everything to deal with. But we want to be consistent, always keep doing things the same way. The computer helps a lot. Let the computer do all the sending work. I use the paddles only when somebody called me and I messed up typing their call in and I need to keep things moving. I'll send with the paddle just so I don't have the pause. Because what happens if I wait a while I'm correcting the keyboard? The guy, everybody goes, oh, he didn't come back to anybody, and they'll start calling again. So for me on CW, it's like I don't want to waste any time, so I want, as soon as I've got a call, I either have it typed in or I'm sending it with the paddle so I can keep things moving. Now, most logging programs have a mode where you can type in 3 or 4 letters and go ahead and hit the key to send the exchange and continue finishing typing. This is a huge help on CW because now I don't have to have the whole call typed in. I just have to have like the first 3 or 4 letters. So I can start the sending and then I can finish typing in the call and the computer will finish things off. If you haven't been using that, practice it and try using it for a while. It makes a huge difference because now you're not so anxious to get everything typed in. The call can come into your brain. You can kind of start typing while you're making sure, okay, did I really hear that right? Yes, I've got it right. Anyway, as soon as I've got enough characters in, I hit the insert key and then I finish typing. And if I mess it up, I can always hit the escape key to stop and use the paddle to resend or something like that. But this will make things go much faster. The idea is the guy finishes, you start. The more you can prevent spaces, the better, especially on the low bands, because on the low bands, if you have a space, then everybody starts calling, now nobody can hear you come back, and so on. Just practice. How many people here know what when I say cut numbers, does that mean anything? Yeah. So cut numbers are where you use an A for 1 and N for 9, and I think most people get A for 1 and N for 9, no problem. What's a U? What's a J?
2, I guess.
Is it? I don't know. People send U to me, and I always have to ask them to send it again because I don't know what a U means.
V is 4.
U is 4?
We is 4.
Oh, V. Yeah.
We
Okay.
did it up.
We is 3.
Is it J?
A dot is 1, is it?
I think I just made my point, though. There are places to use cut numbers. 5NN for 599 is a great place to use cut numbers because, okay, we know it's going to be 599. But if the serial number is 1246, sending AUVB is probably not going to be helpful because now I don't know, did that B at the end mean was that a 6 where the guy forgot to send a dot, or was it a 7 where the guy forgot to send the dash? I don't know. So I'm going to ask him to send it again. So the whole point here is you live very close to a part of the world where they love cut numbers. In Eastern Europe and in Russia and so on, but for the most part, I find that they just cause more trouble than they're worth. So my recommendation is only use them for the things that you know, like 599s, or in the case of CQ Worldwide, where you know it's 14, A4, that's okay. Everybody knows it's going to be 14. Doesn't matter. The faster we can get done with 14, the better. But
T for 0. T for 0.
T for 0 is another good one. That usually doesn't cause a problem. But even there, if you're sending a 4-digit serial number and I get 1TT4, you know, I'm going to have to stop and think, okay, is this a guy who's going to make 1,000 QSOs or not? And did he mean what he said, or should I ask him to send it again? The other thing on numbers is if you send it wrong, just send it again. I love the guys who send the number wrong, and then now I'm sitting here going, okay, am I supposed to guess what the right number was, or do I ask them to send it again? So it's okay if you make a mistake sending a number, you just send it again, and it'll actually be faster in the long run. But anyway, numbers are about the only magical thing on CW. They seem to cause the most trouble for people. And CW, we can all talk, we can all converse, but on CW, it is a skill like playing the piano or a musical instrument or anything else, any other sporting thing. You have to practice to get really good at it. So now here's probably the hardest thing for a new contester to learn, and that is, when should I be running people and when should I be tuning around? And what makes this so hard is because it all depends, all the time. There is no rule. So to make big scores, you want to run any time that you can. When I say run, I mean call CQ and have people answer you. Why is that? It's because if you think about it, there's only so many frequencies on the band to start with, there's only so many slots. But most of the people who are not in the contest are just tuning around calling people. The guys who are serious about the contest will eventually all find each other. So to win the contest, the winner is the guy who works the most people who are not in the contest. The guys in that bottom participant layer. Well, how do I get those guys? They're not calling CQ because they're just tuning around calling people. I have to be calling CQ. So this is why there's so much pressure on today, and why you hear so much CQing going on, because really that is the way to improve the score. Puts a lot of pressure on the bands, but so you want to run anytime that you can. If you hear an empty spot and there's no one there, call a couple of CQs. If guys start calling you, great. If they don't, keep moving. But so search and pounce though, there are many times in a contest where you could call CQ and work 30 people in an hour, or you can tune around and work 40 people in an hour. So based on our earlier example, which one would we rather be doing? This is why the decision is so hard. We'd probably rather tune around unless we think there's a chance that people who call us might be extra multipliers. So it's okay to not call CQ and to call people, because it'll make your score bigger. Especially if you know I need some multipliers, like I need multipliers from the Caribbean on this band. Okay, well when the Caribbean time is coming in, I should make an effort to tune down the band and make sure I get them all, rather than just hope that they're going to find me. So anyway, all that said, in the end there's no magic formula. It really is up to understanding the strategy that you have and what you're trying to accomplish. This is where looking at those old logs is important. In W1, the band opens to Europe every year at the same time because the sun comes up the same time. So I look at the old logs, and after a while I see, okay, well we almost always start working people at this time, and then we start running people at this time. So I know that I need to be looking for a frequency because I need to be running people when the band finally opens. And just get that from learning and from experience. There's other times in the afternoon from W1 where it's still full daylight outside. 20 meters is still good, but I know I have to be on 40 meters because that's where all the QSOs are. I don't know. I'm looking out the window, the sun is up, there's no way 40 meters can be open, but the logs and the experience tells me that yes, that is the place to be because it's dark in Europe and people can hear me well enough. So you want to have your plan for where to be and then use that to help decide where to go. So if we're going to be running, that's our goal. Where should we be spending our how should we be doing this? And if you're not in a big station where you can just, wedge your way in, it's not a bad thing to be the first or the last station on a band because it's usually a little quieter. There's still lots of people tuning around, but you can get a spot. And that's the hardest thing, is to get a frequency where you're not under underneath someone. It's also important when you're not at a big station to realize that there are some fights you can't win. So the big guys depend on that, unfortunately. It makes them rude, but at the same time, you know, sometimes things just change or they keep moving a little bit, and after a while you have to realize, okay, I'm not going to win, I'm going to go do something else. High in the band is good. Anywhere in the band you can find where you can be heard is good. So there's no magic frequency. It doesn't matter if I'm at the top or the bottom. I just want to be a place where I'm not being covered up by someone else. But pay attention to your surroundings. And what I mean by this, I'll often tune up the band and I find a spot and it sounds really clear. There's no one here. I should call CQ here. Before I do, though, I always listen a little bit on each side because I want to know who are my neighbors. Now, one of my neighbors could be W3LPL. That's a pretty good sign that that may not be a very good neighborhood for me. But if I know that, and I know it's W3LPL, and then I know, well, I'm 1.8 kilohertz or 2 kilohertz away from him, that's a good spot because I know no one is going to come up from the bottom from him. But whereas if I was only 1 kilohertz away, I know that's a bad spot. At the same time, I'll often have a clear frequency myself, and somebody else will come in a little bit off the side, or a little up or down, and they're in my skip zone, so they can't hear me that well. But I know they're there, and I need to know all the time: is this somebody that I'm louder than they are, and I can stay here, or is this somebody who's going to be louder than me, and I need to move down or up or whatever. So even when you're running, anytime people stop calling you, listen around who's nearby. It seems like a small thing, but when I listen to the guest operators come to my station, this is one of the things that I see. The good guys always just know what's going on around them, and the guys who are less experienced, you can just hear the frequency slowly collapse in on them, and they don't realize what's happening. The best thing you can do when you're calling CQ is get the call signs right on the first try. This is another thing about practice. I'll talk about more of this in a minute. But if you get things on the first try, then everything just goes a lot faster. This last statement, know your goal and your thresholds. If I'm calling CQ and the rate is very slow, there are times in the contest where I know that's still the best thing to do because there's nothing else. For me, it's like 09 Zulu. The bands are all bad. There's no Europeans. There's only a few South Americans, maybe some Oceania. I'm just going to call CQ because there's nothing else to do. I'm looking for guys who are not in the contest. Whereas at the high peak hours, I know I have to be calling CQ. So you just want to understand your plan and stick to it. Okay, but there's a lot of times you get to be the caller. And I think the big thing here is, remember, we started with score being one of the most important. Understand where score comes from and understand the trade-off. That's what we mean by opportunity cost. If I stay here and call this station, what am I giving up? What could I be doing? I work in sales, and we have a saying, is there someplace better I could be? When you're calling on somebody who's not going to buy, the question is, do I stay here until the guy buys, or do I go somewhere else? The same thing is true here. Do I call in this pile up, or do I go somewhere else? Or do I go somewhere else and come back later when the guy is ready to buy, that kind of thing. So, how important is this contact? How big is the pile up? Is the propagation getting better for me or worse? Sometimes if it's getting worse, you have no choice. You got to stick it out and hope you can get through. But this is an important thing. Smart is better than loud, especially on CW. But just like any de-expedition, listen to the guy. What's the pattern? How does he work? How fast does he pick people up? And then if you're chasing cluster spots, you want to be away from exactly where the spot is, because otherwise you just hear this tone. The receiver, the pileup, I can tell when I get a cluster spot because everybody's calling exactly the same frequency. And what am I looking for? I'm looking for a guy who's up or down. And that guy will get through every time. The people who clicked on the cluster spot don't get anything. Okay, I'm going to speed up a little bit here. This is just talking about when you do tune the band, find a station, you call, you don't get through. Hit A equals B, and now start tuning the B VFO until you find a station. Then bounce back and forth until you work one. Okay, great, that one's done, and keep going. This kind of allows you to use the dead time while he's working someone else. You can use this time to keep tuning up the band to find the next station. This can make a huge difference in your rate. It really, probably like adding 30% of time, you know, because now you're, while he's talking to somebody, or if the guy asks for a repeat, you can keep looking for something else. And practice, there's no substitute for practice. And you think, how do you practice in contesting? Well, you get on the air and work guys in contests. So if you want to be good in the CQ Worldwide, then you need to just probably spend a little bit of time in some of the other contests that are leading up to it. Just practicing. And practice, if you watch professional golfers, they come to the practice range with a plan. They know exactly what they want to try. So in different contests, I'll practice. I'm going to tune up the band and see if I can find all the guys that are in this contest in a particular region. Or I'm going to see, you know, I'm going to work on search and pounce by just calling people today. And then listen to the good guys. Be like the good guys. Don't be like the bad guys. We all know the bad guys when we find them because we don't understand what they're saying. They're slow. They take too long. We listen to what they do wrong and then try to avoid that. Which leads us to accuracy, which is something we've kind of talked about a little bit. You've made your score. You sent your log in. Now the log checkers will start comparing things, and they will decide, is this QSO good or bad? And what they're doing is taking points away from you because you made an error. It's okay, errors happen, no one is perfect, so don't worry about error. Making errors is not the problem. Preventing them is the goal here. And so that's what we want to focus on. So here's an example. English has 180,000 words. Find a big dictionary. But most people don't use that many. Well, you know what? Contesting has a vocabulary also. It's call signs. So the CQ Worldwide Phone Contest had 101,000 different call signs in the logs that we found. Now, were there 100,000 people in the contest? No, because, well, 56,000 of these calls only appeared one time. That means they worked one station, period, they were done. That happens, I mean, it's not impossible. But what we've seen is probably 90% of those are bad. They're just errors. So if you understand call signs and so on, understand these 15,000 active call signs, then you have a really good chance of avoiding some of those kind of mistakes. So I have a test for you. So here's some calls. Which of these call signs is bad?
Oscar Bravo 9.
The Oscar Bravo 9 is one. Suggestion?
India Bravo.
India Bravo.
Oh, it was India, okay.
Yeah, sorry, not 1B.
Charlie Delta.
Charlie 73? What country is Charlie 7?
No.
There isn't one, that's right.
And the diplomatic car sign there.
What, okay, what other ones are bad?
Whiskey Zero Alpha India Hotel.
Okay, W0ASH. That call may not be bad, but,
No.
No.
Alpha India Hotel.
right. Right, you guys are pretty good at this. Whoops. So, there's the ones that are bad. These are all calls that people logged in the contest. So C73NL should be Charlie 37 November Lima. They did a multi-op. HI3TIJ is a very good example. There's a couple of letters you have to watch out for. Italy and Echo, just because of the way different languages say E and I. English being the one that's backwards. So it's easy to make that mistake. OB9DCM, I don't know why, but H becomes O on sideband for a lot of people. And so you just have to know that and watch. But if you hear OB9DCM, you got to be pretty sure. I've never worked in OB9 before, so I should ask him. P3W, their call is Papa 33 P33W, but they say it very fast. And so it's easy to miss stuff like that. And then W0ASH is W0AIH, that's another one. But then you have these calls like this. and you just have to know, or you have to ask them to repeat. And I only put that one in there because I've worked that guy 2 or 3 different contests, so I don't know if it's some kind of special club station or what, but they're active. So there's an example of one that got into my call sign memory. It's like, okay, that call was so weird, and then I hear it again. It's like, okay, now when they call me and I hear why something OTC, I know it's probably that guy.
What kind of call sign is a CD call sign? With all
Oh,
the
that's a very good one. So in Chile, they have this, I don't know if it's a no-code license, but it's a beginner license. It's limited to 10 meters, and that is the call. And those cause us all kinds of problems from a log checking perspective because it doesn't match the way call signs are supposed to look. But yeah, in every contest we'll have a few of those, and they are legitimate call signs. So one of the things you can do, I'm going to embarrass Bjørn here because he took me around the city yesterday. So in the CQ Worldwide and the WPX contest, one of the things we do when we finish checking the logs is we send everybody a link to their log checking report. And so there's a bunch of text here telling you all about it. But then we show you, okay, here's exactly how we counted your score, and here's the various errors that you made, and so on. And so we can see here that there are a lot of people who didn't have LN8W in the log. Now, does this mean Bjørn got it wrong? Not necessarily. It could mean that they made such a terrible mistake we can't figure out what, we can't get things to match up. So, so that's not all on him, but it's good to know, okay, I've got these. Here's the ones that are really useful though, and this is really good to have this small number. But we can see W3 Zulu Alpha, I don't know how that got to be W3 OA, how you got that one wrong, but that's a good example. YQ2 AIA, Alpha Alpha Alpha, it's easy to see where you could make that kind of mistake. So anyway, but when you look at these, you start to realize, okay, do I always get V and W, Victor and Whiskey backwards, or do I get I and E? You start to see, okay, these are things that I need to work on to get better. Let's see. Did I skip? All right. But here's the interesting thing. We also tell you everybody who made a mistake in copying your information. So at the bottom of the report, stations copying your exchange incorrectly. In this case, this is mostly people just making a really bad. They think L was in Argentina or something. But in a serial number contest, it's sometimes very interesting to see what kind of mistakes do people make in my number. Is there a number that I need to say differently or say more clearly because people are making that mistake? And then here are all the people that copied LN8W wrong. So we can start to see that they, LN7W, RN8W. Now this is worldwide CW. So it makes sense when you think about it that an L could become an R, a 7 could become an 8. That's very easy. If we looked at this report on sideband, we'd see a different kind of mistakes. But take a few minutes when you get, if you get the link from us, or if you need it, I have everything here on the computer. But take a look at what kind of mistakes people are making on your call and do something to see if you can correct that. Because probably that will help you also with getting through the pileups and making things go faster.
But it could be bad cluster spots also.
Absolutely.
But Lima November is a very unusual call in Norway. There's not that many calls that has Lima November.
Yeah, but there's enough of them that people shouldn't be making.
No.
Yeah, you can't always, CW is probably the worst because you can't always fix these. Sideband ones are usually more fixable. But anyway, it's a resource that's available if you want to kind of see.
Just one comment you may have to make your relays work faster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it
So
was
you get the first dot, else you have to listen.
Right, so if there were a lot of people who had D and 8W, then yeah, you'd be absolutely right. That would show that probably the linear is missing at the first dot or something.
Oh, that happens. So.
Okay. Anyway, I'm sorry, I'm way over time. So just, you don't want to, it's not the log checkers taking QSOs away from you, it's you making mistakes. I want to make that very clear. So we're not out to get you, okay? Our job is just to try to make sure everybody is checked the same way and did the same thing. So make good contacts, know who you're calling, and don't ever trust the cluster to get the call right. I think if you assume the cluster is always wrong, you'll be more right than the other way around. All right, so I'm way. Just one last point here. The number one thing that can help your score is to actually be in the chair working people. In other words, when you're asleep or watching TV or something, that is not helping your score. So you got to sit in the chair, you got to work people if you want to improve your score. And you know, that may mean different things in different contests. So if you're going to do the serious whole contest, you need to make sure that you've cleared out all the distractions like your family and everything else. If you're just going to do a part-time effort, then you have to decide, you know, maybe I want to try to get on at a different time, at different times during the contest, so I can get a lot of multipliers, which will make my score big, but maybe I haven't spent that many hours. Or maybe I just want to get on and run people for a couple of hours and quit, but you know, you get to decide. I do just want to talk really quickly about sleep. There's nothing you can do to learn how to be sleep deprived. You can get better at dealing with it, but you can't make it go away. If you stay awake for a lot of hours, it's going to hurt. But what you can do to help yourself is to be in good physical condition. The better physical condition you are, the easier it is to, the physical part of contesting is easier. Don't try to, you know, just stay on your normal sleep schedule and sleep extra the week leading up to the contest. What people sometimes will try to do is say, well, I'm going to stay up late on Thursday night and sleep in on Friday, and I'll be ready for the contest. Your body doesn't work that way. So you're far better off to just get rested up as you get into the contest. And then the biggest thing is, if you're going to sleep for 90 or 180 minutes at a time. And this is because you have a cycle of your sleep, and you come back up towards wakefulness every 90 minutes, plus or minus. So if you set the alarm for 90 minutes or 180 minutes, it will be much easier to wake up. The worst thing you can do is set the alarm for 60 minutes, because chances are good you'll be very low in the sleep cycle then. And you'll wake up, and it is the weirdest feeling. It's kind of, I call it sleep drunkenness. You're sitting at the radio, and it's interesting the conversations you have with yourself when you're in this low part of the sleep cycle. I once woke up, talked to some guys on the 2-meter radio, and then next thing I know, I'm in another room of the house asleep. So I don't remember anything from that. So I learned that 90 or 180 makes a big, it really helps. And in the end, you know, sleep just makes you want to quit. It just constantly grinds. Like, oh God, this is so, I'm so tired of this. Why am I doing this? This is why the goal, having a specific goal for yourself, or better yet, somebody you're competing with, where you can go, well, I'm not going to go to sleep because I don't want to lose to that guy. That's what it's all about. So anyway, just to kind of close things up here, you know, this is just a lot of different ideas, but have a goal for what you want to do. You know, use the time wisely in the contest. You only get so much time. So the more efficiently you can use that time and the more accurate you can be, you know, you'll make more contacts, you'll keep all the points. And just remember, everybody else is going through the same conditions. So it doesn't matter if conditions are great or conditions are bad. Everybody's dealing with the same thing, so you need to just keep going. And actually, the worse conditions are, the better, because more people will quit. So your chances of winning. So you have to think of it that way. The worse conditions are, the better. And I realize up here in the auroral zone, that may feel like all the time, but that's what you have to do. So with that, I think I'm a little bit over the time, but any quick questions? You guys have asked some as we've gone along. All right, very good.
Yeah, any question? I have at least one, but I thought I would leave the questions for you first.
Yes?
Just one, I'm quite new to contesting, but and I only get one transceiver for contesting, and everybody keeps telling me you should use 2. What do you think about that when you're new? Should you just stick to one transceiver, or should you use 2?
No, 1 is enough. So I think I think what you see here is that the top guys who have a lot of experience and skill often will use two, because there's a lot of time in a contest where it's just you're listening to the computer call CQ or something, and you use the second radio to kind of fill in to, okay, what else is going on? Should I change bands, find multipliers, that kind of thing. And it's easy to see where, oh, well, these top guys are doing it, it must be the way. No, what it is they've practiced for so long that they actually have, you know, the driving the car example. They can drive the car without having to think about it, so now they can spend time. So for you as a new person, the number one thing you should focus on is getting really good at operating with one radio. Don't worry about the second one, because there's lots to learn with just one. You still have to learn when to call CQ and when not. You have to learn how to tune up the band and call people. You have to learn how to get through the pileups. You have to learn how to manage the software and the score on the computer and everything. And so just focus on getting really good at all that. And the day you're operating a contest where you turn the television on, that's when you know you're ready to go to the next level.